pretty good conversation with two really smart people, and I'm about to bring them up. You know them both. It's Judy Herman. Here she comes. Look at that. 3, 2, 1. Hi, Judy.
Hey, Clint. Good to see you.
Good seeing you. Let's bring up our friend. Let me unmute her. We want to make sure she has a voice. Hello, Karen McMahon.
Hello, Clint and Judy. Nice to be here.
Oh, it is nice to be here. So let's get some formalities and niceties out of the way. It's a new year. Did everybody have a good New Year's transition? Are we all ready to go back to 2021? It looks like this year may be actually crazier than last year. I think there's a 7-day guaranteed money back, 100 something.
Hey, it's going to go up. It's got to go up, right, from 2020.
I just hope it didn't blown up. That's my thing. So let's real quick, because then I want to dive into definitions of what busting through limiting beliefs means to each of you. Judy, are you a New Year's resolution person? Do you do the New Year's resolution thing?
I don't call them resolutions. I call them goals. I call them getting clarity, because I do not want to live Groundhog Day year after year. In other words, right now, I want my life to look very different than it did at this time last year and the year before and the year before that. So I think it's very important to have some kind of vision and goals for our lives. And so I know that the term resolution, it just doesn't work.
Karen?
And that's okay. I use something else.
Yeah, I just had a huge transition. I was always north of the two of you in New York, and I am now living in Florida. And
welcome.
Welcome to the South. And the warmth and the sunshine. I'm like, what was I doing in New York all those years? So both of my young children have flown the coop, and this year is about me and a new chapter, and just taking care of myself and pushing the limit and doing new exciting things. So I'm pretty stoked.
Hey, y'all, hold on one second. You're going to lose visual sight of me for just 2 seconds, but I promise I'm coming right back. Just watch this. Here we go. We're going to reload. We're going to reload the page. Yeah, I think we're good now. All right. Yeah, so you know what that means, Judy. We are going to, starting probably in 3-4 months, we'll get on here with Karen, and she's going to have really, really light blonde hair and be dark and be saying things like, totally, I got to go soon. I'm got to go get some rays. She's going to change herself. We're going to see a change in Karen.
Environment makes a difference, for sure.
I will tell you, sunshine, like I keep calling my friends up north, and I'm like, so my mother used to do this to me all the time. So what's the weather like up there? Oh, it's cloudy and cold and snowy. I'm like, oh, it's sunny, and I got a t-shirt on. And
now, I will say this, though, before you get, and then we're going to get into it. Florida is south, but it's kind of a different south because it's a mixture of people from everywhere. It's south. But here's the other thing. You've not felt humidity yet. Just hang on to July and August when you come on.
My hair will be out to you.
Oh, you'll be using cuss words you haven't used since your kids were small. You'll be saying bad words and asking for forgiveness.
Hey, Karen, I think you need to hang out with some positive people.
I think I'm hearing a few limiting beliefs, but we're going to get into that.
No.
I'm going to mute you, Judy. Hold on. Let me mute Judy now. All right, so let's do this. Let's kick this off. Now, Judy, I know you have to go, so we got that 30 minutes in with you. Tell me what your definition of a limiting belief is, and then Karen, you can fill in the gaps or add to it and then I got questions.
Simple. We only see a very small part of ourselves. We can look at the past, and then as we grow older, our imaginations seem to go downhill a little bit. And those are limiting beliefs, things that we believe as gospel truth, and we don't challenge them, and we live much smaller lives, and we're using only a very small portion of our brains. So in essence, our limiting beliefs keep us limited, and they're only limited because we don't know what we don't know. And we need to hang around with people who think bigger than we do.
Karen?
Yeah, I think that we're very unconscious about our limiting beliefs, and whether it's something that was that we picked up from our parents or our childhood. It's almost like you're looking, like Judy said, you're looking at the world through like two straws instead of like a full lens, and limiting beliefs limit our possibility. And when we become conscious of the way we think and the way we speak, and we begin to challenge the way we think and the way we speak, we stretch beyond the limiting beliefs. And so often people think that circumstances and people in their lives are keeping them stuck, but it's often one of the four things that it is limiting beliefs. And that's all that happens between our ears.
Both of you said the word challenge, challenging those limiting beliefs. And I wrote down before we came on, and you said it, we don't know where they come from a lot of times, right? We're almost pre-programmed. We get through childhood. We're so young. We don't know what's happening to us when you're 6. You don't know what's going on, what you're being taught when you're 9. It's when you get to be 25 that stuff comes out, but you don't remember it. You're just like, I can't do that, or that's who I am. But how do you challenge? When you say the word challenge, what does that mean?
Well, I'm going to tell you, I was working with a client, and she's an interior designer, and she's very humble, and she's just rocking it. She's doing really, really well, and she's at the point where it's not going to be joyful anymore because she's becoming a slave to her business. And so we started talking about bringing on other people, and she said, I can't do that. I'm not a good business person. And she said it as if she was saying, the sky is blue and the grass is green. Right. And so I was like, well, that's interesting. Talk to me a little bit about that. And so bringing our attention to it and then talking about it. And as I got her to talk about, well, let's talk about where you do business well. Like, how did you get to where you are? And what we ran into was her limiting belief right behind it or beneath it was just a fear. And this sense that I haven't and therefore I can't. But we don't even know any of that stuff. We just think it and we say it, and then we abide by that skinny little lane that we put ourselves in. And so challenging it, to your question, is really, and it's with so much, it's like anything you think, challenge it. Anything you say, how true is that? That's one of my favorite questions. How true is that?
There's this little word that is only 3 letters long that starts with a Y and ends with a T. So if she says, I'm not a good business person, and you can add the word yet. I'm not a good business person yet. That gives them.
And that too, though, is eliminating. You're not a good business person, but you've got clients like bubbling over the top, and you're running a business and you're doing something that's incredibly successful. So I would suggest that it may be in many cases that it's yet, but here's a perfect example of, well, then what are you? You're rocking it.
I've got to tell you, my mentor, I'm now in Les Brown's mentoring program, Power Speaker for Speakers. And one thing that I've really learned from him, it's really an awesome visual. You cannot see the label when you're in the jar. Isn't that interesting? You cannot see the label when you're in the jar. That's why you need relationships around you with people who can see things that you cannot see about yourself. And it's being around people who can see your giftedness, and you may have an area, your limited belief, you're likely denying a certain area of genius that you have, or a certain area of giftedness, or a certain potential that you have, but other people can see that. And that's why relationships are so the right relationships that can nurture you and see some things and encourage you and help you bust through in a positive way what your limited beliefs are about yourself.
And can I don't want to cut you off, Clint, but I want to piggyback on that.
No, I could go away. I was just going to
the last thing you said is so important, because some of us have been raised where, you can't do that. You're not smart enough. And I remember my mom used to say to me, please don't sing. You can't sing. and so I literally would like lip sing for like the first 20 years of my life. And my mom was like, Karen, you're tone deaf, don't sing. And I started dating this guy who was a guitar player and sang. And he was like, what is with you? Like, it's just me, sing. And then he was like, you have a really nice voice. So sometimes the relationships that we're in, if all you're getting from your relationships with a given person is criticism, and both Judy and I talk about toxic relationships, that's not the reflection that you want to be listening to. So when you want to be expanding your limiting beliefs, you want to find the people who lift you up, who acknowledge and validate all that you are, because there may be people in your life, and intentionally or unintentionally, who are actually helping to keep you in a box that you don't want to be in.
Yeah, so I'm good at just throwing stuff out there and you taking what y'all want and run with it. First thing I wrote down is, there's the what others think of me, what I think of me, what is the real me, and what do I want to be? Those are questions I try to get businesses to think of a lot of time. What does the customer think of me? What do I think we are? Where's the reality? And is that a reflection of where I want to be in the future? So here's the other things I wrote down, though. So Karen, when you said your friend says she's not a good business person, I think one of the self-limiting beliefs is how we use definitions. So I'm doing a series of short podcasts right now. I put out like 10, and I used to do it all the time, but 2021, new stuff, right? So, and all of them are between 10 to 20 minutes long, and are about lessons I wish I was better at remembering or learning. One of them is definitions. So when someone says to me, I'm not a good business person, what's your definition of a good business person? So the limiting belief may not have to do with my skills. I don't think. I may be limited by what my definition of a good business person is. I may not have anybody sit down and go, do you know why John's that good or Sally's that good? She's got a team around her. She's not good at everything. So it's almost having to relearn the definitions. And so I'm listening to y'all talk and how important it is to be around people that encourage you to try again when you fail, learn. And then I think we get stuck in, this is the big one for Clinton. One of y'all are going to take this and run with it because y'all are therapists and y'all love stuff like this. I think we all end up living lives sometimes according to other people's limited beliefs of us.
You're spot on with that, Clint.
It's not only the stuff I've been taught to when I was 6, it's now currently 50-something years old. I'm hanging out with people and they say, why are you doing that? And you go, oh, I don't know. Maybe I shouldn't be doing that. It's their limiting belief. They can't do it, so they think I can't do it.
That's why it's so important, because you are like the 5 people you hang out with the most. Who is it you're hanging out with? And if they have limiting beliefs, and you're trying to fit into them, well, you're going to stay there. So that's why I think it's always better to not be the smartest person in the room and to hang out and with people who are much smarter. Who are
never a problem for me. Never. I am a therapist's dream when it comes to that. Clint, I need you to hang out with people smarter than you. Thumbs up, Judy. Sending you the money today for this therapy session.
I mean, there are a lot of people who are in leadership positions. They lead groups, you learn your stuff, Karen, you're a coach, I'm a therapist, and we help people that are getting to, but we need, whatever your profession is, we need to hang out. And I know, like, there's clergy, pastors, there's business owners. It's lonely at the top when people excel in their professions. And it's so important to not limit yourself, whatever position you're in, and to make sure that you are hanging out with people whose lives are bigger than yours, or who you do admire. And when you develop those kind of relationships, you grow. But when you outgrow people, that's a problem, isn't it? I mean, I think a lot of times we think, oh, we have no choice. We have no choice but to X, Y, or Z. But we do have choices, because we just have not opened up our minds of what those are.
I hate to say that it sounds simple to say challenge those thoughts, but if it was that simple, everybody would inherently just go, well, I just need to challenge this thought. How do you know when a thought needs to be challenged? And I guess I'm trying to figure out how to ask this question. I'm usually better with my words. When you say challenge my thoughts, I am so busy. I don't know. I don't set time aside to sit around and challenge my thoughts. How do you get somebody in the habit of challenging their thoughts if they don't have a therapist? In other words, I'm Clint Powell. I come to Karen. Or I come to Judy. Is it just a matter of me getting in the habit of when something comes up, I've got to learn to challenge it? Or do you recommend people set time aside on a weekly basis and take some self-inventory about how the week is going?
Oh, I think that's a great idea. First of all, I'm sorry, Karen, if you've got some things.
No, right in.
So here's, we don't need to trust our own heads and our own thoughts anyway, period. No matter where you are in life, no matter, you don't have to be seeing a therapist to challenge your thoughts. Here's how you challenge your thoughts. For me, I tune into podcasts and I learn from people. You have a whole lot of people on your podcast, Clint, that you learn some things from. They're interesting people, and they automatically challenge. We don't have to consciously say, well, I'm going to be challenging. It's having an attitude of curiosity. I'm going to learn something. So in other words, you don't want to walk around on this planet thinking you're a know-it-all, or thinking that that you've got it all together. You need to have an attitude of curiosity and learning and growing, and whatever your interests are, and becoming the best at what you do, whatever that is. I'm saying, reading books, inspirational books, how-to books, novels, listening to podcasts, all of that.
Karen?
Yeah, I think that, I guess my tip would be, take a look at your life. Here we are, we're in the beginning of a new year. And where are you desiring to be further along than you are? And if you were to sit down and say, and let's look at it, it's like relationship, money, spiritual, physical, social, health. You take a look at those categories and you say, on a scale of 1 to 10, where am I and where do I want to be? And let's say you pick, and don't try and do a bunch at once, but pick one. And what has kept me from being where I want to be? And you're going to find a limiting belief. And so, it's like another client, she just said, I'm going through a divorce, and, I just feel really bad that I'm going to be single for the rest of my life. And I was like, well, why is that? And she was like, well, it's just, there's just not enough time. And I said, how old did you say you were? And then she's in her early 50s. And I was like, do you have a fatal illness or something that you didn't mention to me? And I like to be playful. And it's really, so whatever it is, whatever that place is where you want to expand, be playful for yourself and say, what's kept me here? And what's my belief that's kept me here? And why do I, where do I get stuck in whatever that next step is? And so I actually do challenge my thoughts on a daily basis. Now, granted, I do what I do for a living, but so often I stop myself and go, is that true? Where did that come from? How does that serve me? What would be better? What would move my ball forward? And so I think that we can all do that in any area, especially areas where we're not pleased. We can begin to move the ball forward by looking at how we're thinking.
So I'll make a suggestion, and this is great. When I make suggestions, I get professionals to look at me and smile politely and go, yeah, don't do that. Do this instead. But I would challenge people that listen to this or watch this. And if you think I don't really live by limiting beliefs, or I don't even know if I have any limiting beliefs, usually people don't really understand what limiting beliefs are, I don't think, until they get sick and have to go to the doctor, right? You don't know you're sick until you have the symptoms. You might have had the bug for a while, but the symptoms start coming out. So I would challenge people to sit down and actually try to make a list. Say, what are some things that I think, or what are some things that I say, that's not who I am. I could never do that. That would never be me. Write down what you think some limiting beliefs are. And if you're in the middle of turmoil, because my relationship with both of you started in the middle of chaos in my life.
Right.
Well, when I started talking with people like you and you're telling me limiting beliefs and challenge those thoughts, this is the crazy. This is how much I think you should take your mental health serious. Write it down on sticky notes. Put it in your phone. If you know you're in the middle of whitewater, when I'm coming to rescue Karen or Judy in the middle of whitewater, I throw the emergency ring in front of her because that's where the stream's taking her. I know she's going that direction. If you know you're in the middle of whitewater and you know on a daily basis I'm going to have these thoughts, then put them in your phone. Just put the phrase, is it true? Write it, put it around you. Remind yourself as you're going through this whitewater time in your life, who cares if it's silly? I'd put it in your car. So wherever my thoughts hit me, just get used to asking that question. Is it true? I love that idea.
You're spot on, Clint. I love that idea too. It is so very healthy. It really is good to do that, to take inventory of your life. Yes, do it at the new year, but it really needs to be done more often than that. If you can evaluate, like, last thing before you go to bed at night, take an inventory, kind of take a panoramic view of your life, spiritually speaking. As a Christian, there's a thing, it's called the daily examine prayer, where you take inventory, you kind of notice where God showed up, or your responses, and it's just a good cleansing thing to do, and to do that on a regular basis is a really good thing.
And I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
I think that for someone who has a hard time noticing your limiting beliefs, just sit down and write down your beliefs. So I believe the three of us are Christians. So my belief in Jesus Christ is an expansive belief that invites possibility. That's one of my beliefs. I have other beliefs that really limit me. And so perhaps one thing to do is just sit down and go, well, what are my core beliefs? What are the things that show up all the time between my ears, my thoughts? And about all those different categories that we talked about. And then which ones bring me value and lift me up, and which ones stifle me. And so that might be an easier way for someone who's never looked at it before. Just look at all of them and then see if that doesn't help you sift out the ones that you want to poke around at and maybe let go of. And I think that that's the next piece, is noticing the limiting belief, challenging the limiting belief, and then letting go of it. And it can be very sticky. If this has been a belief that's been with you a long time, thought habits are habits. And so it's easy to go back to it again. Or a saying that I've really dislike that comes out of my mouth anyway is, let's kill two birds with one stone. And I'm like, I don't like killing birds. I don't want to talk about killing two birds with one stone. It's ridiculous. For me, it's like, I don't want to say that statement. That statement doesn't align with who I am, and yet it comes out of my mouth. That's the unconscious part of us. And now that I've said it publicly, and this is something I'm trying to be really clear and careful about, making sure that what comes out of my mouth is aligned with me. And so thought habits just are very sticky. And so just because you write it down, and even if you talk about it, doesn't mean that it goes away. It's a practice.
I don't think they ever really go away. I think they always, once you've learned it, I think it stays in the back of your mind. You can get better. That's like grief. I think you get better at managing grief, but a loss is a loss, and it's going to always bring up a memory. It's always going to evoke a feeling and emotion. It's how quick that flame burns out when it happens and how you manage it. So limiting beliefs, I don't think, go anywhere. You remember what you thought of yourself. When you overcome it, it either becomes a point of pain or a point of pride. You're like, oh, I do good at that. Isn't it funny though? And then I got a question, and I'll let Judy take it, but isn't it funny how little time we as human beings spend time on what it takes to be a better human being? I mean, not just therapy and relationships, but just overall how much little time we actually focus on how we navigate life because it's so short. We got to end up living. Yeah, but it's are you living the best life? It's so weird. I say this all the time. You know, we're just skeletons covered in meat. That's all we are, running through the cosmos on a planet. And we got like 80 years, 90 years, and we just take so little time to make sure that we're getting the most out of those 80 or 90 years. It just frustrates me when I talk about this. I'm like, we should all be spending time on ourselves every week.
We are so valuable enough. And that is the human journey, isn't it, Clint? I mean, it's the human journey. It's the invitation. None of us are designed to be stagnant or to be, you know, what did you say? Skeletons with
we're just skeletons covered in meat. That's all we are. We're just
Thank you for that visual.
And we're floating on a big rock in space. I mean,
oh, here's what I believe, Clint. I believe we are so much bigger than that. We are put on this earth to live how many ever years we're going to live on this earth, and there is only one of us. That God designed us in such a way that we are unique. No one else is exactly like us, and we have a purpose and there's a plan. And so for us to get tuned into that plan and realizing that we can join hands with the divine, so to speak, and fulfill a purpose, to me, that's busting through some limited beliefs, because otherwise we are gonna be living Groundhog Day, or just the years go by and our bodies get older. No, that's not it at all. We are leaving our mark in this world. Now, this is something also that my mentor has said, like to go to your grave and make sure that you have nothing left in you. Like, in other words, if you have a book that you never did write and you die before that book is written, right? That's like, you want to make sure that you are fulfilling what you were designed to do here on earth.
The book dies. If you die and you didn't write it, the book dies. Nobody else can write that specific book than you.
Not only the book, the idea, the thought that only you have. So in other words, I think it's very important as human beings to live our lives in such a way that we are going to outlive our influence. I would like to leave this world a better place, making an impact for good. That's why, you know, I want to spread anybody that's in my presence, counseling wise, friendship wise, family wise. I want them to leave my presence feeling better than they did before. I want to nurture other people. I believe that's part of my purpose and why I am here on earth, right? And so when you get tuned in with that, and that's going to happen, but it is worth seeking, worth finding. It raises your level of, oh, that's why I'm here. That's why I'm here. That's why I'm doing this, right? And we always think twice about things. I mean, more than twice. Like, I did write my book, Beyond Messy Relationships. I had that in my head way before I ever wrote it, right? I didn't even know how it was going to turn out. and so I wrote that book, but that was, like, if I kept saying, I can't do that, and you know, you're not going to do it. And then that book is in you and you're not giving to the world. And I want to leave this world a better place for my children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren, and all of that.
Well, and Karen, you know, you're living through this a little bit, and you could have easily just said, I am from New York. That's where I'm at. I've always been that way. Moving is not in my nature. Or in other words, you got to get through some limiting beliefs to change where you're living, to change your direction. And then I ask you, now that I've made that comment, I'll ask you this, Karen, limiting beliefs when it comes to relationships. So not only is there the dynamic when we have limiting beliefs affecting Clint's life, you know, I am what I think I am, but now I've got to take that scenario and go have a relationship with somebody else.
Yeah. And that's where, you know, in relationships, the rub comes in, not because of how the other person is only, but how we are. And so a lot of times you don't know what you don't know. So you've been raised in this family of origin and you've become the peacekeeper or the people pleaser or the boss, or, and so you take on these different behaviors, but you don't realize it. And then you get in relationship with someone else, and now there's a rub, and you know what their problem is. You know what they're bringing to the table that's wrong. Or you're the other way, and you don't see anything at fault with them, but you see all of these faults of your own. And so whichever way we look at it, they're limiting beliefs. And so wherever we're not, I think that I would say wherever we're not really pleased and thriving and pushing forward, there's something for us to find between our ears, in our thoughts, that's limiting us and then driving us in a direction that we don't want to be going.
And I'll say this to both of you, and I think it's a great example. I'm listening to you, and I remember talking to both of you when I was going through my life situations and circumstances. And one of the things that I did constantly was apologize. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. And Judy, you may not remember this. I've said it before. First time I met with you, you had actually said, Clint, you said, I'm sorry, like 15 or 20 times in 20 minutes. Karen, you even said something like, I've noticed you say, I'm sorry a lot. Well, and this, I'm going to make a stretch here. You tell me if I'm right or wrong. That's a limiting belief. If I believe I'm always wrong, your attitude is my responsibility. How you treat me is my fault. If everybody, all of a sudden, I'm wrong all the time, I'm apologizing. It's hard to be the best you if you're always sorry. That's a limiting belief, limiting myself on it's all my fault, right? That's an example of one. Is that right or wrong?
You're probably enabling the other person to not take responsibility, basically, right? That's one thing. Or your sorries may have meant something totally different. Okay, I'm sorry. Let's get this over with. I'm sorry. Let's go.
Or it could be all. It could be, I just want everybody to be happy. I could just be saying, I'm sorry. If saying I'm sorry makes us happy and move forward, then I'll be sorry. Let's go.
Yeah. And so I think that anytime you see a relationship, and I'm down in Florida, I moved near my sister, who's one of my favorite people in the world, and my mom, who's struggling a little bit. She's 83. And so it's like when I find that whenever you go back to the family of origin, there's, there are this long history and there's rubs, and it's for me, and based on what you said earlier, Judy, like if I always want to be my best self, then being here with family of origin issues and seeing what the rubs are, and what is my thought, what's my belief about, like, I always tell my mother, your favorite is on the phone. Whoever calls, either of my sisters, number one is on the phone. And it's like, it's a joke, but then it's like, okay, Karen, do you really believe that you're always number three? And what does that mean? And how do you react to mom as a result? So any relationship we have, we can stretch past our limiting beliefs and improve those relationships, not by changing the other person, but by stopping apologizing, or noticing why I apologize, noticing why I make these jokes, and what's really true behind it.
But that's it. I didn't know till it was pointed out. And then both of you made me stop and say, why are you saying that so much? And are you really sorry? And if you are, what you're sorry about? And that made me start processing the whole thing. Judy, you have to go in about 3 minutes. So here's what I was going to get you to do. Finish up your thoughts on this. Karen, can you stay with me about another 10?
Sure.
Okay, because I want to wrap it up in a smooth transition. Finish up your thoughts on limiting beliefs, and then tell everybody how to get more info about what you do in your book.
Yes. Okay, thoughts about limiting beliefs. First of all, if you're around people, I just want to put a plug in here. If you're around people in relationships that are sucking the life out of you, then make sure you find a group of people in which you can be energized. Okay, that is so important to take care of yourself. And yes, you need to be around people that can recognize your area of giftedness, your area of genius, your area that they can see you. They can see potential in you much more than you could even look in the mirror and see it yourself. It's like being in the jar, but not being able to see the label. So get to the point where you are determined to find out what your purpose is so that you can live a much bigger life here on earth. You are so valuable and so worth it. And You are so needed and so deeply loved and cherished and worthy. So first of all, I wanted to leave folks with that. Secondly, you can get my book by way at where books are sold. There are, and it's available on all formats, the print and Kindle and Audible version, and you can get add-ons. It's called Beyond Messy Relationships, Divine Invitations to Your Authentic Self. It is my memoir, but it's also, I show up at the beginning of each of the chapters as a therapist. I'm going to get you grounded in your own story as you hear mine. And I've been through a lot of messiness in my relationships. I've dedicated my life to learning about relationships. And so there you have that. Go to my website. Also, I'm going to show up more, Clint. I'm going to tell you, I'm going to be doing some live Facebook videos on a regular basis. And I know that I need to do that. I've needed to bust through my own limited beliefs in order to do this, that my voice needs to be heard, especially at such a time as this. There are some that are telling us that the fourth wave of COVID is mental illness, and people need hope and they need positivity. Again, I've said this on this program before, that the neurons of your brain, if you think a negative thought, is going to stick like Velcro, and a positive thought's going to slide off like Teflon. We need to spread a whole lot more positivity. It's not being Pollyanna. It's not being Pollyanna at all to choose not to watch visual news. It's wise, mental health wise. It's okay to just tune into whatever news app you have for 5 minutes and figure out what's going on. Do not saturate your mind and your heart with negativity, and choose to live the biggest version of yourself. Okay, so I think I'm starting to preach. I so apologize. Right now, one other thing. I'm so excited. I'm having an intern work with me. Her name is Mandy. I'm going to have her on some live Facebooks, and she's going to be seeing clients. And I'm doing this group called Relationship Resilience, and it's for empathic women. Okay, so look on my website. Tune into my my Facebook page, Judy K. Herman, Facebook. So, hey, Clint.
That's awesome.
And you know what? I want to tell you, buddy, you are so valuable. You keep on doing what you're doing. And
well, thank you.
You let anybody fool you otherwise. And Karen, you are awesome yourself.
So
don't you just feel like when you're done talking with Judy, every time I'm like, well, wrap it up and tell us what you think. It's always, you're valuable. It's always, I get through and I feel like, oh, I'll be damned, I am valuable. Look at there. Look at that. You know what? Take that, world.
Yeah. All right. Well, good.
All right, Judy, we're going to let you go. We look forward to it next time. We'll do a lot more of these 2021. Thank you. All right, Karen. Hold, stay with me, Karen.
All right, bye.
There you go. All right. So, yeah, I always feel good after I talk with her, because she does make you feel like you're the star of the show. Yep. And that's always good and needed. So I do want to ask another question or two about limiting beliefs. And I asked a little bit, I was going to ask how it affects relationships. And I know we went down that road a little bit, but it's almost like being in a room with 20-foot ceilings and being a balloon and only having a 10-foot rope. It's because I'm tied down and I can see it. It's all around me, all this potential, but I don't know how to get there. If you're in a relationship though, and you feel like it's not going anywhere, starting with yourself is the best thing. I'm trying to figure out, when do I call Karen? When do I call somebody like Karen in a relationship? And are you going to only deal with my limiting beliefs, or can we talk about how bad my spouse is? And can we really do that? That sounds much better than you dealing with me.
There's something about feeling empowered that only happens when we work on ourselves. And I think that a lot of people who are in unhealthy or dysfunctional, or just relationships that could be beautiful but aren't for some reason, there's a lot of blaming and accusing of the other person. And one of the things that we work with our clients on is, when you get clear on your part, and when you work on yourself, your emotional energy shifts in a way that invites the other person to participate differently. And so in anyone who's struggling in your relationship, it is true that if you keep the focus on yourself and you work on yourself and you acknowledge and validate the positives in the other person, which I know sometimes it's hard. It's like, but I'm so frustrated with him or her doing X, Y, or Z. And it's like, okay, that's that negative bias that Judy was just talking about. What do you love that they do? What do you really appreciate that they do? What do you appreciate about yourself? And when we start turning it, that's when things change. And if I work on myself and if I acknowledge and validate the positive in my partner, the limits begin to fall away. So do I need to say, Clint, I want to sit down and talk to you about your limiting beliefs. That generally is not going to go over very well. But if I said, we've been in relationship and I've noticed these things that I do that really don't serve our relationship that I would like to change, that opens up something. And the caveat is, if you're in a relationship with a high conflict person or someone who's got a personality disorder, you do not want to do that. Like, if you know that that's the person, because then it's dangerous and you're opening yourself up. So, but if you're in a relationship with someone who, you've just gotten to a point where there's a bunch of rubs, there is beautiful work that can be done. And we work with both individuals and couples, to your other question.
Yeah.
So I've had people come to me and say, you're a divorce coach. I want to talk to you, but they don't really want to get a divorce. And when I hear the story, it's like, it doesn't sound like this marriage needs to be dissolved at all. How would you like to just work on your part in the marriage? And beautiful things happen when just one person changes. When both people come, and I've had a couple of experiences recently, what's really interesting is all of those limiting beliefs, when you're in a couples coaching session, come right to the surface, because you have a filter, not just in what you see, but in what you hear. So your limiting beliefs have you hearing something different than what your companion or partner is saying.
I had this experience when I was doing, just a couple of days ago, on the side, I do some sales consulting, and a manager had said something to the sales rep, and the sales rep in my one-on-one with them regurgitated it to me. And when I was talking to the manager, they're like, my exact words were this. And what's really odd is the manager said something specific. The salesperson heard what they wanted to hear, very specific. And I reiterated with both of them. And what's funny is the difference meant everything. The difference in one word, what someone heard versus what someone said, changed the dynamic of what was intended and what was expected moving forward. So you're exactly right. What we hear a lot of times is not what the other person's trying to say. And I wrote this down. I would imagine in your world and in Judy's world, when you get in front of a couple, they say stuff like, and I'd say, we talk all the time about our relationship. We just talk. It's constant. I cannot tell you how many times I've had buddies that go, all we do is we just talk about what's screwed up with me, what's wrong. We talk about our relationship all the time. And I stop them and I go, are you talking about your relationship? Or are you talking about what pisses them off? Because talking about your relationship should be intentional. You shouldn't be talking about your relationship only when it's bad. In other words, if the only time you're grocery shopping is when you're hungry, you're going to buy things that aren't good for you.
Right.
If the only time me and Karen are talking in a relationship about the relationships and when she's mad, it's not healthy.
And it gives you a very skewed view of what's real.
Yeah.
And when two people, I had a couple weeks back, and he said something, and so you have to reflect back. So I said, well, reflect back. And I was like, well, that's interesting. I was so curious that that's what she heard. Like, we were in the same room, we were speaking the same language, but her filter of interpretation was so askew.
Yep.
That he said, I this, and she heard, you're indecisive, and you, and you, and you. And meanwhile, he was just saying what, And so that's such a big part. And if you have, and you may just be having some rubs, you don't have to reach out to a coach or a therapist. The first thing to do is just a very simple exercise. And when you sit down with that person, your person, and they have something to say to you, reflect it back. So what I heard you say was,
it sounds so cheesy, but it's so effective, right?
What I heard you say was, and then I get to say, well, no, that's not what I was saying. And then I get to say it differently. So, okay, so now I'm hearing you say, yeah, now at least we're talking the same language and you're responding to what I said, not your interpretation of what I said.
We end up arguing about stuff that's not arguments.
In a flat second, you've got people throwing emotional grenades across the room. And meanwhile, there's not even necessarily disagreement.
Yeah. Well, and I wrote this down and then we'll wrap it up. But I think that's why it's more important now than ever is to find something that you have in common, whether it's a Bible study, a book. Let's read books and come talk about it. Movies, podcasts, hikes. It does something that gives you time apart, but it also brings you together. So you learn how to talk. If you can learn how to talk about other stuff, it will translate on how you talk about important stuff. How you learn to dialogue in one area can teach you how to dialogue in another. And is it possible that when I come into a relationship, I have limiting beliefs, not only about myself, but about my partner? And the partner is nothing. It has nothing to do with who my partner is specifically. But if I bring in misconceptions or limiting beliefs on what my partner was the last time, and I start dating this person, I'm going to try to squeeze you into that mold. Well, you probably are going to act like this too. You probably are going, I'm going to have to watch and not trust you on this. I can impose limiting beliefs on a partner who's never done anything like that, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I had a situation once where I was dating a guy and I come from a very difficult relationship. My ex-husband was very, very angry, and I was taking a bubble bath, and I put in too much bubble bath.
Yeah.
And so the bubbles started bubbling up like 3 feet above the tub, and I had this absolute panic attack that he was going to come in and start yelling and screaming at me. Now, this is a guy who never raised his voice, and so the limiting belief was actually, it was really based on trauma and fear, and it wasn't conscious, which is why in the beginning of our session, our conversation, I talked about when we become conscious. So he came in, he laughed, he helped clear out the extra 3 feet of bubbles, and everything was fine. And then I'm sitting alone and I'm like, wow, I wasn't afraid that person was going to do it. But I did exactly what you just said. I implanted my past experience onto this situation and then had this fear reaction about it. And so the more conscious you are about the way that you're thinking and the way you're interacting, the less that's going to happen. And the more you do your own work and heal, as you did, Clint, at the end of your marriage, the more you heal, the less of that you bring forward into the next relationship. The reason second and third marriages have a higher rate of divorce is because it's like, well, it was his fault. I'm just going to go and jump in with the next one. And you have this rinse and repeat situation.
Yeah, I'm a big believer. I think that'll be a mandatory minimum 12 months, minimum 18 months before you can date anybody ever after a divorce. That's just my opinion. I think you should take 12 months minimum. Should be a national federal law. If I'm ever president, I'm going to executive order. You shall not date for 12 months minimum after a divorce or a breakup of a long-term relationship, because that's where you've got to be alone long enough to address the beast in the basement and the angels above.
Yeah, and to get to know yourself and enjoy yourself before you expect somebody else to know and enjoy you.
Yeah. How in the world am I supposed to know what I'm bringing to the table if I never figure out what I got in the basket?
Right.
Look at that.
Well put. I like that. I like the beast in the basement too.
Oh, that's why I hit that heavy bag every day. The beast in the basement, the angels above. That's what I tell. That's how I live my life. So,
love that.
All right, let's do it. Let's wrap it up. And I want to make sure you tell people how to find you. You also are putting out a lot of content. You have community pages. You have an ebook. So tell people where they can get stuff about your company.
Yeah, so because your podcaster is listening, we have a podcast called Journey Beyond Divorce. And right now we've got a couple of different series going that I'm excited about. We just wrapped up a year-long series on high conflict divorce with all types of experts that can help you. We started a series that Clint was part of called Voices of Celebration, where twice a month we interview people who have gone through divorce and worked with Journey Beyond Divorce and kind of came out really good and are able to talk about how they grew. And then we have two new series. One is the High Net Worth Divorce Playbook, which really talks about the complexities for those of you who have a lot of net worth and how important it is to understand all those complexities going through divorce. And then we just added our JBD Team Talks, which is just me and my team of coaches really doing this, just chewing it up about topics that constantly come up in our sessions and sharing, tips and strategies.
How many people do you have on your team now?
I have 4, myself and 4 others. Yeah.
See, here's what you ought to do. Let me come on one day this year and have mystery 5 topics, just 1-word topics. And I'll just throw them out like meat to the lions and y'all can just dive into it.
Meat to the lions. You've got some interesting visuals going there.
I don't know if I want to do a lion therapist. Is that so continue on how to find
it's a great group of coaches, and my website's Journey Beyond Divorce. And this year, if you are going through a divorce, this year we're launching 2 things. In the next few weeks, we're going to have coaching groups that are limited in size, especially for people who can't afford private one-on-one coaching, but really want support and connection. And we're also launching another online course on all of the legal aspects of divorce. And so how to hire an attorney and what approach to take and all the things that you need to know on the legal and practical front. So we've got a lot of exciting things coming up. It'll all be on the website and our Facebook page, Journey Beyond Divorce.
Thank you very much, Karen McMahon.
Thank you. It's always a pleasure, and you always make me laugh. You're a fun guy to chat with.
Well, I appreciate it, and welcome to almost the South.
Yeah,
you're kind of the South now, kind of.
A lot of New Yorkers down here.
Yeah, you'll fit right. Yeah, Yankees will fit right in. However you say it, Boston, whatever, New York. I don't know, whatever. Thank you very much, Karen.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Take care.
See ya.